Hello, folks. It's a new year, but we still have same old favorite sponsor. That's right. SunsetLakeSebede.com. Use the code Left is Best. You'll get 20% off. What will you get 20% off? Well, in this new year, it is finally time for you to try one of their tinctures. They got tinctures to help you to sleep, tinctures to help you relax. They've got tinctures in 3 different flavors and different concentrations, some with melatonin, some with sebaen, as well as sebede. They also have lotions. They have salves. They have coffee and fudge. They have all sorts of gummies, gummies that help you focus, gummies that help you relax. Those are a big hit in my parts. Gummies that help you go to sleep. Gummies that have ashwagandha mushrooms. They have smokables. You want to mix it with other things? You want to have it on its own? They have keef. They have flour. All great products. It is a great business. They have great business practices, $20 minimum wage, but mostly employee owned, nearly a co-op. They are movement partners. They've donated literally tens of thousands of dollars to places like Planned Parenthood and strike relief funds and refugee resettlement and give directly. And they've engaged in mutual aid up in Vermont. This is the company, folks. These are the products. SunsetLakeSebede.com. Use the code Left is Best. You'll get 20% off. These make great gifts for your parents, for your friends, believe me. Okay, now time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, January 3rd, 2024. My name is Sam 25.
Yeah.
Darn it. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. Also on the program today, the House to vote any moment on Mike Johnson's speakership. I so much want to say Mike Johnson's Johnson, but that didn't make any sense.
Wow.
Meanwhile, this is placing
Are you his son or
a
something?
smooth Trump transition in jeopardy. Biden blocks the Nippon bid for U.S. steel. Republican judges cite reversal of the Chevron doctrine and kill net neutrality. FBI says New Orleans attacker was a Texas military vet who acted alone. The Vegas bomber was active duty military vet, or I should say U.S. military, and at least a one-time Trump supporter. Businesses sue California over their new ban on captive audience meetings. Biden administration commits an additional $300 million to fighting potential bird flu epidemic. What's old is new again, folks. SIU announces 1,000 doctors at 4 New York City hospitals are prepared to strike. And Social Security retirement age increases as of today. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Casual Friday.
But not just Casual Friday. It's the first Casual Friday of 2025.
I really almost said Newsday Tuesday because it certainly feels like a Tuesday, but it is not. It is a Friday.
I don't feel so bad about my screwing up the year because John Miller on the IM says my 2024 New Year's resolution is to buy less coffee. I got news for you. You've already blown your 2024 resolution. You better work on your 2025 resolution.
Yes. Do you have a resolution for 2025?
Well, it was to not screw up the date.
Dang it. All right, so you're in the same boat as John Miller here.
I just don't want 2024 to exist anymore, and so far I've been successful with that.
Yes, agreed.
As my resolution. Do we know if they've started to vote yet in the House? Understand what's going on here. The Republican caucus, every time there's a new term, every 2 years, whether it's the Senate or the House, each body essentially reestablishes its rules. And they vote on it. And they voted on their rules the other day. In the Republican caucus, they get to decide what the rules are. That is the value of having the leadership within those houses. You can only go so far with the rules, although, those keep getting pressed more and more. And, the idea being that the only thing that keeps you from going too far with the rules is that the potential that you may not be in charge 2 years from now, whether it's the Senate or the House. The Republicans have legitimately a razor-thin majority. I don't know if it's been closer in decades.
The maximum that it will be, even if they sweep these special elections, is 5, which is the margin that Mike Johnson had last time around. And it was chaotic then.
And there's every reason to believe that they're going to win these elections because they're very solidly Republican districts. But the point is that 3 of those people, or 4 now actually, because Gates is not there, are not there. So it's a 1 vote margin,
basically.
And the way it works with the selecting a Speaker of the House is you must win the majority of votes of people present. That number is not a fixed number, the number who are present, because some people can vote present and therefore their vote doesn't count and as part of the quorum. So this is a little bit confusing, but let's just use round numbers. 100 Democrats, 105 Republicans. It's actually like 2020, 215. It's really I guess 16 in terms of who are present, right? In terms of...
well, right.
But the point being, if 5 people were to vote present, then it would be 100. And 100 Democrats, let's say, vote for Jeffries, 100 Republicans vote for Johnson, it would be a tie. You'd have to do it again. But if 4 vote present, there's 101 Republican votes available. Let's assume they all vote for Johnson. They're fine. If those other people vote for someone else, though, then those numbers are there, and that means that you still need a majority of the votes. Is that wait? I've got it now.
Wait, hold on. I'm confused because what's the 100 number coming from?
I was just using that to make it simpler. But
then I got confused. But long story short, I think it's a 2 vote margin, right? Because there's Massey. Massey's already said because he's a anti Mike Johnson hardliner, right?
Yeah, so the reason why Chip Roy is so prominent is because
he's
basically
that
if
vote.
Roy is the hinge that then they have to.
So
How
the
does it
math
work
is
with the
that-
present, though? If I vote present, am I counted as part of the majority, or just I'm taken off the board? It's when I vote present, that's where it eliminates the numbers of what constitutes a majority, and then puts it more in play for the Democrats.
Yes.
Because if, let's say, 4 Republicans vote present, then Democrats actually have the majority of, assuming they all vote for the same person, of counted votes. I don't know how else to articulate that.
But Massey is saying, no, I'm not voting for Mike Johnson under any circumstances. So it's been falling on Chip Roy right now, who people might remember as a big troublemaker. 2 weeks ago, he was on the House floor railing against the spending bill that Mike Johnson had agreed upon. So he has his own political ambitions as well. And what he wants is to be the head of the House Rules Committee, according to some of the tabloidy DC reporting that we're seeing. And because of that stunt and previous stunts that he's pulled, including against McCarthy, the speaker previously, Mike Johnson doesn't want to give that kind of guy who has his own agenda untethered from his that level of power. And so Roy is kind of the big holdout right now. But establishment politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan, I say that sarcastically because you can just see how quickly these right-wing freaks become a part of the establishment of the party. They have Johnson's back.
Here is Fox News just begging Republicans not to screw this up.
I think it lacks strategy and also substance, frankly. And that's my whole issue with this. And we've been talking about it all morning, that the purpose is to legislate, and you cannot get anything done without this pre-game ritual. This is not the time to demonstrate petulance or some type of power over the will-be speaker-elect in a couple hours. I mean, the reality is we are depending on you to get to work. We talked about ad nauseum the mandate the American people have levied on this particular Congress, on this particular government, as to the refreshing new insight that we need, the refreshing...
Pause it for a second. This is like she's been studying for SATs or something like that. But the irony is, like, on one hand, we're saying, look, we have a razor-thin margin. You got to not be petulant. There's no room to lose any votes. On the other hand, we also have this huge mandate.
Right.
I think Kilmeade falls asleep here, but and catches himself. Go ahead, Brad.
Nauseum the mandate the American people have levied on this particular Congress, on this particular government, as to the refreshing new insight.
Oh, way to go back. Here we go. Oh, boy. He does fall asleep. What's going on with him? He's having a tough time. All right, go back. Folks, you got to focus on Kilmeade here and watch. Let's just go back a little bit.
Can you zoom in on
hours? I mean, the reality is we are depending on you to get to work. We talked about ad nauseum the mandate the American people have levied on this particular Congress, on this particular government, as to the refreshing new insight that we need.
Oh my God, he woke himself up.
Yes, that is efficiency. Yes, that is cutting spending. But it is not in the form of, again, this pre-game ritual that will only hamstring everyone that we are depending on to get that legislative agenda passed after today.
He's so pissed. He's the only one of the A team on Fox and Friends that isn't on vacation right now. He's like, God,
I got to go through this.
What does she mean by pre-game ritual? What? They're not like having a carbo loading before electing Mike Johnson as the speaker. Like, they are jockeying for political position in a razor-thin majority. That's like what? I think really, by the math, the slimmest it's been in decades.
In real terms, I mean, in terms of who's there for the next 3 months, definitely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, maybe 100 years.
So we're rooting for maximum dysfunction. That's the kind of thing that we need.
Max dysfunction. Yeah, definitely.
The max left wants max dysfunction.
Always, whatever max there is, that's the one I want. Speaking of which, here is Mike Johnson I mean, you can just, the desperation is dripping off of all of these people to sort of get past this. Mike Johnson, the only thing that he can basically do is, and we mentioned this yesterday, they are trying to set up I think, some very, very extreme stuff on immigration and immigrants in this country for January 21st. And so they're looking to any story where they can possibly gin up some hatred towards immigration. This is a twofer for Mike Johnson. It fulfills that edict that I think is coming from the soon-to-be inaugurated Trump administration, which is any chance you get, you need to create fear around immigrants. And then Johnson's also hoping that this is going to help his bid to be speaker.
They tried to convince us that the greatest threat to the homeland was racially motivated extremism, when we all looked at the wide open border and thought logically that that might lead to terrorist attacks in the future. We need a dramatic change, and this emphasizes once again why this election was so important to the country. And we cannot get President Trump here soon enough. 18 days away from his inauguration and his cabinet coming in. And we need all of these people that he's chosen, who are law and order types, who will get control of these agencies, including the FBI and the DOJ, to get to work immediately. It can't happen soon enough.
So basically he's saying it's the no need to fear white supremacist organizations. It's our wide open border. And we just had 2 attacks carried out by U.S. either active or retired U.S. military personnel.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the extremism in those ranks in particular, that's not something that they want to address. It's just because, and we said this yesterday, Fox News was blasting the photo of the New Orleans attacker all over the place, but less so what happened in Vegas, where both of them were former military. I think they actually, there's no evidence that they worked together, but that's still an open question at this moment. They were at what used to be called Fort Bragg together. And the attacks, they used apparently the same ride app to rent cars, but that's, what's being fleshed out right now. So we'll see if it doesn't seem like they had any connection. It might just be a wild coincidence, but either way, it's incredible that they're trying to make this about immigration, because none of their audience is going to critically look into the fact that this guy was born in Texas and is an American citizen just because he's not a white person.
Just to be clear, both of
them. But the white guy they're not showing.
Perpetrators. Yes, exactly.
Records regarding the white guy in El Paso County, Colorado, indicate he registered in 2020 with the No Labels Party, which supports centrist common sense candidates. What's going on with these radical...
Max centrists. Folks, it's a new year. I'm getting back into the groove with things. Means I've got to prepare meals for my son. But do I really? No, I don't. I can use this newfangled device called the microwave.
Whoa.
And I can cook a delicious meal for my son in about 2 minutes. He loves these. He loves, I've made him a mushroom chicken thigh meal that I never knew that he liked mushrooms. He loves chicken thighs. And I come off like I'm actually like a cook.
Very nice.
Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved. They're ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes. So you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. I want to thank Factor for supporting the Majority Report. Factor lets you do you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. You can get started at factormeals.com/majority50off. That's majority, the word majority, the numbers 50, and then the word off, OFF. And use the code majority50off to get 50% off your first box, plus free shipping. You can lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals. Based on a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto, results will vary depending on your diet and exercise. But they've got 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week. It's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. You can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, or my own personal division, whatever Saul will eat and not complain about. And it's actually quite large.
Right.
His palate is expanding. Factor can help you feel your best all day long. They got wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that cannot be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/majority50off. That's majority50off. And use that code majority50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code majority50off at factorsmeals.com/majority50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description for that Factor deal. Also, people who know me that I am been a front wallet guy for ages. Why? Because I think having it in your back pocket hurts your back. That was my theory, anyways. But of course, I'm sitting
your pocket.
I'm sitting on well, that too, I guess. But I'm sitting all day. I don't want to be sitting on a wallet. But then I need to have a wallet that's going to be slim and not look like I have like a, I don't know, a coffee mug in my pants. This is my new wallet that I've been carrying.
I was eyeing that. That is very sleek.
It is very sleek. It is called the Ridge wallet. Ridge have completely transformed how I've been carrying my, essentials here. You pop it out like this, super easy. When I do carry bills, which is, less and less these days, I slide it right into that part.
Oh, nice.
It fits right into your front pocket. It is incredibly durable because, as you can see, it is like this is made out of, I think, like I don't know if it's like the gun steel. I can't remember, gun metal. But it also uses RFID blocking technology, gives you added security against digital theft. It comes in over 50 colors and styles, so they get something for everything. They have received 100,000 five-star reviews. It comes with a 99-day risk-free trial and a lifetime guarantee, which is easy to understand once you feel this thing in your hands. But it's not bulky. It's super slim. If you're tired of bulky wallets like I was, I highly recommend you give Ridge a try. It has changed the way that I carry my essentials. Go to Ridge, RIDGE.com/majority. Use the code majority, get 10% off. Thanks for Ridge for sponsoring this episode. Check it out. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. And now I'll take a break. When we come back, Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland. it is our second show of 2025, our first Friday, and want to welcome back to the program the great Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. Jeet and I were just spent some time on the high seas.
You were cruising.
We were cruising.
Well, yes, I think that might be the verb to use. It has many.
That's what I'm using.
But they were actually like Majority Report viewers. A segment of them that came out to cruise with Sam, and yeah. So
we had a good Majority Report contingency on that boat, without a doubt. And all right, well, Jeet, let's get into it.
We'll see more in the future. Yes.
Yes. Let's just start with Mike Johnson. Give me a sense of what you think his chances are of being elected speaker, and if he's not, like, this is going to it feels like he's going to be, only because it's really difficult to sort of wrap your arms around what happens if he's not, because who are they going to elect?
Well, no, I think that's the exact point I was going to make. Like, if he gets in, it will be because who would want this job, right? like basically, I don't know what the analogy is. It's like being the captain of the Titanic. I would have a very narrow majority. Being a House Speaker has not normally been a kind of happy event, happy experience for the people who have had it. I think in the past we've even seen former speakers like Boyner, like occasionally, do tweets kind of chortling at the fact that they're no longer speaker. And basically it's an untenable position because of the there's a significant, minority within the party in the caucus that are like, total nihilist and will always play kind of like, games. And then you have to it's such a narrow majority. You have to cater to always you need everybody. So that means that the wackiest and among the Republican people, there's some very unhinged people out there. You have to cater to whatever the hell they want. So it's going to be him, but only by default. I think that would be my guess.
When you've got someone like Chip Roy, is that his name?
Yes, Chip Roy.
I mean, when you have or Massey or some of the other Freedom Caucus folks.
Yeah.
What does that say about their electorate? Like we don't have, it seems to me, anything even remotely equivalent on the center left where you would have a representative who is so their constituency is so sort of like, I don't know if you could say nihilist or just like they are so entrenched in deep conservative ideology that their representative can do this. There was I don't know, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, there was a call for some of the squad to do this. And in my estimation, they would have gotten chewed up. I mean, we saw Bowman lose because he was not paying enough fealty to the Democrats and actually voting for Biden's original agenda. It was twisted against him. But
and Cory Bush, I think, has the same experience. Yeah, I think for both of them, I mean, I think it's two very different coalitions, and I think in the Republican coalition, it's a more unified coalition in the sense that I think even though they've had some expansion demographically among people of color, it's still an overwhelmingly kind of white, rural, very evangelical coalition. And especially with the sort of gerrymandering that's been going on, these districts are safe seats for any Republican, whoever can win the primary. And this is the whole thing. It's it's a primary game. Whoever can win the primary will, as a Republican, will get those seats. And in the primary system, it is the really hardcore ideological right. And the coalition, I mean, I think even among the more moderate Republicans, there's kind of a belief. Well, we need these people. They're the sort of attack dogs or hardcore that keep people in line. The Democratic coalition is very diverse, not only demographically but ideologically, and there's much more prized among the sort of general primary electorate is like, can you get along within the coalition? Can you work with a Democratic president? So
yeah. Sorry, Jeet.
Yeah. I mean, it's the difference between a sort of a very cohesive coalition and a diverse coalition, and it creates different incentive structures.
I also just think to restate a little what you're saying, the Democrats are not Republicans. That is their basically, and you have somebody from Gottheimer in the party to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. And that is the problem, I think, right now, which is like, what is the Democrats' brand? The Republicans are both, they benefit from being directly a capitalist party that is going to benefit industry. So those ideological inconsistencies are kind of just, you could just throw them out in the trash because what really matters is what I just said. But for the Democrats, this is why they need to be a party behind organized labor, because that's how they could create some sort of actual party identity, as opposed to the Republicans who, by default, in terms of who they serve and the racism and the unfettered capitalist exploitation, by definition, they're always going to be more ideologically consistent across the moderate, I put in quotes, to extreme spectrum.
Yeah, I know. I think that's right. Although I mean, I would say for Republicans there is a sort of governance problem. Like I actually think with both Trump certainly, but even I would say Bush Jr. There's real problems of actually getting certain things done because you have some of these lunatics that will jam up their own president. But having said that, I mean like. The end result is like they get what they want. I mean, I think the party donors want like low taxes, no government service, and the more ideologically extreme people, they might phrase it in ways that are offensive to moderate Republicans, but they kind of want the same thing, right? And in fact, government. The other way I would put it is government dysfunction. Is actually what the Republicans want. Like they kind of want,
right.
Like government shutdowns, government that's constantly always in crisis. That is actually a good result. It's not a bad result, right? Like whereas if you actually want to like kind of have a governing coalition that is actually able to like achieve things, it creates a different set of incentives for like sort of to compromise. And yeah, it is a negative. I mean, the Democratic identity is just that they're not Republican, and it has the sort of same problem of like any large coalition. You see it in places like de facto one-party states, like in Japan, right? Like if you have a party that basically just governs as we're just a party of government. There's very little stable identity.
Let's turn to. I mean, assuming that Mike Johnson ends up being the Speaker of the House. Yeah. I mean, and if that's the case, let's turn to this big H-1B fight, because it also sort of like dovetails into, how Democrats should approach the Trump administration or anyone who's looking to sort of thwart a lot of the agenda of the Trump administration. It started out, I guess, with Vivek Ramaswamy saying that there was a cultural problem with Americans. That
native in quotes, which means
Native Americans,
white,
of the traditional hue in this country, that we have become, soft and not merit-based, which sounds a little woke, actually. It makes it seem like people are just getting by on their whiteness, but I don't think that's his point. His point was like, we're not, striving for excellence, and only
because we like Zach Morris too much.
And only immigrant families.
I want to just give a little context for this, because this is actually very I think his comments fall into a particular tradition, which is, like, if there's a sort of, traditional, like, racism of the sort of, Charles Murray bell curve type that, people of color have low IQ, are lazy, shiftless, welfare dependent. And Murray got attacked for that. And then he came out with, like, another book basically saying, well, you know what? This is actually also true of poor whites. They're also lazy, shiftless, welfare dependent, not getting married. And he thought, and then this is actually also J.D. Vance's original argument in Hillbilly Elegies, right? So there's a kind of contingent of the right that basically, I call it sort of like racism against poor people. Like it is, and it is like it is an oddly.
This is also like Moynihan stuff. Even going back to Moynihan, late senator from New York. I mean, this was. But what's
the cultural? It's a sort of so-called cultural explanation. But I mean, the functional purpose of it is like it does sort of feed into a kind of socially Darwinist view, which is one sees it in Silicon Valley, and someone like Elon Musk and Trump himself will talk more forthrightly about IQ. We need high IQ people, and I think the trap that we can fall into is because Ramaswamy and Musk are fighting, like insane racists like Laura Loomer and Ann Coulter and Steve Bannon. Some people are thinking, these Musk can be our ally. But if you actually look at what Musk and the others believe, I mean, they actually believe in basically like racism against poor people. We want like a hierarchical elite society, which will also draw in the best from all around the world, and also be organized in a way in which the boss, the Silicon Valley people, the Peter Thiels and the Musks, will have power over these employees. So, I mean, like, it's a social Darwinist vision that's not too far. It's another. I see it as another variation of racism rather than an alternative to racism.
All right, and let's separate out like that trap that you were talking about, because this is really important, I think, too, is like, how do you weigh in on this debate without necessarily saying I'm weighing in, on the sort of second order reasons why someone is supportive of this. But the other thing that's...
I think one thing is there's two things. One is the sort of traditional, Godzilla versus Mothra stance, which is, let them fight.
Let them fight, yeah.
Which is like, I think pretty valid. But I mean, having said that, I mean, like, I think the important thing to keep in mind is people on the left have long been critical of those visas, and I think for good reason, that this is essentially a guest workers program, which is to get people over who are employees who are doing these jobs who have less rights than American citizens. And the traditional, like, non-xenophobic concern is like, you actually, if you have immigrants, you want them to have the same rights as other people. And I think that there's a bunch of different ways of getting around this. I think one solution, which I am sort of partial to, is sectoral bargaining. That if one has, to go back to Emma's point, like if one makes this a labor issue rather than an ethnicity issue, if one is able to organize these workers to so that they're not indentured, and then to get them not just in Silicon Valley, but sort of poorer undocumented immigrants. If one can get them labor rights, then that actually I think solves a lot of the problems of being able to both get the workers you need, but not having it as them as sort of pawns of to the most Darwinist plutocrats in America.
But that's not what they want, right? And we said this yesterday, talking about immigration as a cudgel against a workforce that has less rights in this country, whether it be this HB1 situation where your visa and where you're living, your employer is like, if you get fired, you're screwed, you're out. So you're more beholden to your employers. And then same thing, of course, with deportation for undocumented workers. But Bernie was getting criticized for his statement on this front where he talked about American jobs. And that, by the way, and I think he could have focused a little bit more on international worker solidarity, but that's just like a quibble. American politicians talk about saving American jobs all the time. But suddenly all these liberals are going after Bernie Sanders because he's putting it within the context of labor exploitation. And I think that's very telling. They don't have a problem when it's used to drum up competition and militarism with China, or if it's to sell a merger or some, business opportunity. But when it's calling out labor exploitation by these companies, they're freaking out. And Warren Gunnels, who works for Sanders, made this point on Twitter, and I just think it's great because Eric Levitz was criticizing Sanders, and he said, I don't think Elon Musk should be allowed to hire H-1B analysts, accountants, or engineers from overseas at Tesla who are paid as little as $52,666 and can have their visa taken away from them by their boss if they complain about unfair or illegal working conditions. Like, the point there is that this framing, it's like, oh, there are all these tech workers making six figures. Don't call them exploited or indentured servants, which was strong language, but it functions in a similar manner. Like, they're not getting paid great, and they could get fired any day, and they're not getting Social Security or like the other stuff that Americans are able to pay into. And that's what guys like Elon and these tech capitalist people who want to make as much money as possible want.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then there are very documented cases of exploitation within Silicon Valley. Like, I mean, people are thinking, well, okay, they're not like restaurant workers, so, they're doing okay. But there's a couple of issues. One of which is because so many of them are from India, as I myself am. When Silicon Valley, we're seeing a replication of the caste system. Where people who are Brahmins get like higher positions, and people who are coming from India who are like Dalits, the so-called untouchables, are shunted into lower positions. And when there was attempts to organize and to make caste hiring illegal in America, the Silicon Valley people came out against it, and they used like sort of spurious, basically fake anti-racist arguments, saying, "Oh, this is discrimination against Indians if we ban the caste system in America." I mean, beyond that, I think the other great example of this is I remember that fake blood thing in Silicon Valley. What's her name? Elizabeth Holmes.
Theranos.
Yeah. So the Wall Street Journal documented this, that a lot of the lower level people in the company had these visas, and they were afraid to speak out against the company and afraid to speak out against the fact that this was a giant fraud, because they would have been deported. So the idea that this is Silicon Valley, so there's no class exploitation going on here, that's just ridiculous. That's not how capitalism works.
And there, I've been reading some of this. The Department of Labor supposedly could set wages higher, but again, it's not just about wages; it's about control that comes with the fact that they have a tenuous presence in this country. But the other irony that also struck me about what Vivek said was, he's making this argument that the H-1B folks should be, we should welcome them in. And again, like, I would welcome them in, but let's really welcome them in by, letting them use, it's like welcome them in, but you can't use the bathroom or the kitchen. Mm-hmm. You got to stay here for a couple nights, but you don't get the rights of a U.S. worker. But the other irony is that he's making this case that immigrant culture is better and has a better work ethic and turns out better workers. And it's like, well, wait a second. Why wouldn't this apply to all immigrants? Like, we have, you got construction workers coming in here and they have the same work ethic as the ones working in tech, right? Like, it's there. It really starts to fall apart on even the slightest bit of scrutiny. And so how do, getting back to that idea of intervention, like, I am all in favor of them, let them fight thing. But there are instances like where it feels like there's opportunities to sumo wrestle a little bit here by saying like, well, we could take H-1Bs would be okay if they had these protections, that protections, but without it, no. I mean, like, the idea of like, I'm going to side with one side or the other. I'm against both of their reasonings, frankly.
No. I think that's right, and I think that is actually Bernie Sanders' position. Like if we're gonna have this visa, it has to be like radically reformed, and the abuses have to end. But I mean, I would actually go a little bit further than that as well. I mean, I think that the sort of the policy angle of let's actually make these visas work for everyone and not just for the plutocrats. I think that's one good aspect. I think the other thing to maybe point out, which I think also cracks the Trump coalition perhaps even more, is just to point out this is why Musk joined Trump, right? Like Musk and the other Silicon Valley guys, they're really heavily invested on an idea of a kind of deregulated America where they can get all the government funding that they want and bring all the workers that they want, but not be controlled. And especially Musk is very anti-union. So I think actually making someone like Musk and the sort of exploitation that he does and the sort of larger Silicon Valley culture does is a way of actually not just addressing the policy point, but actually addressing the sort of broader ideological point, the broader sort of political identity point that Emma pointed to. If you're going to be a party of labor, then you have to point out that yes, we reject the racists like Loomer and Bannon who want to keep America white, but we also reject the sort of people like Musk who are using immigration as a tool for a larger goal of a much more plutocratic, robber baron America.
Well, what
I think, I want to, because this is really important as a model going forward, because there's going to be a lot of this, because there is a lot of incohesiveness. There's a lack of cohesiveness in everything that Trump has espoused, tariffs but low inflation, low taxes but a low interest rate. I mean, all of it is there's a deep contradiction in his policy set. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities where we as progressives or leftists or even liberals will find themselves in between this fight, where the answer is they're both wrong because the reasons why they're pursuing their positions are fundamentally different from where ours are. And you don't just get the outcome, right? Like in these fights. If one of these two sides wins, they win with all the baggage that they're bringing to this fight. It's not just the outcome. H1B things exist or they don't exist. It is the foundations of these arguments that are important to counteract as we go into the Trump years, because I don't think I've heard, certainly not, and I don't know who would be the leader of this, maybe it's Bannon, maybe it's Loomer. They're not arguing for more worker rights. They are arguing for less invasion of non-Americans, non-traditional Americans or whatever it is. And Musk is not looking for the melting pot that immigration brings and the durability it brings. He's looking for suppressed wages.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I will say Bannon has said some. He himself is incoherent, but he did say something which is very interesting, which is he thought we should really be pushing for Silicon Valley to be 20% Hispanic and 20% Black, and which I would say thank you for making the argument for affirmative action, but also to actually get to that position, you would actually need a huge sort of investment in American education, and which could be done. Which I think America has the people who could be doing these this sort of work, but you would actually have to really heavily invest in it. And like Bannon, what makes Bannon sort of just a sort of glib propagandist is he throws these things out without actually thinking through how do you actually get to that end point.
Right, without presenting the consequences and making whoever follows him address those the implications of that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about as we turn from how do we with our ideologies react to these type of fights. You had a tweet the other day that caught my eye, and I'm like, well, I got to have Jeet on. Because I am struggling with this as well, and I of course don't have the tweet in front of me, but it was something to the effect of like, one of the mistakes that you've made in your politics is the idea that you think Democrats, progressive Democrats, can work within the Democratic power structure. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like obviously, I think people, with the broadly left politics were very disappointed that neither, Sanders nor Elizabeth Warren became the nominee in 2020, and it was Biden. But once Biden came in, Biden did try to co-opt elements of the Sanders-Warren agenda, especially instead of hiring a lot of Warren people who ended up doing good work within his administration, and also a lot of Bernie's goals. And so, I mean, the good aspects of Biden's administration really came from that sort of insider strategy, and I don't want to downplay that. That was, there was the first 2 years of Biden, with Ron Klain as the chief of staff, you actually had the left having a role in national politics that it really has not had since the 60s, since Lyndon Johnson. But I mean, I think that strategy always came with sort of cost, and I think that especially on the sort of congressional level, there's the idea one saw sort of. I think there's a divide in the squad between people who have become completely oppositional to the Democratic Party and someone like AOC, who I think has been pursuing an insider strategy. But one saw this actually when Biden was kind of going down, where they both Sanders and AOC were supporting Biden even after the that horrible debate, and they were trying to they got concessions from him. They actually got Biden to commit to he went out
was going to cap rent at 5 or 9% or something.
Right.
At the time I had defended that, and but actually now we're kind of seeing especially with how they had a choice between Jerry Connolly and AOC, and to head the oversight committee, and they went with the 74-year-old guy who has throat cancer, who all sympathy for him and his family as he struggles with this. But when this guy goes on TV, he can barely speak. And this is this is
well, but Jeet, I mean, honestly, though, for the 75-year-olds, with esophageal cancer, he's got a pep in his step that a lot of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, that thing, the fact that AOC played the inside game, and still and really tried to show I'm the good soldier. I will work with the coalition. She was not Bowman. She was not Cori Bush. This party, the party elite is so committed, and I think there's actually a danger that if you're seen as the good soldier, that actually undermines your ability to challenge the party from the left and to win over people who are skeptical of the party, which I think Bernie Sanders was able to do in 2016 and 2020, precisely because he was not a Democrat. And there's always the accusation he's not a real Democrat. Well, guess what? If people associate the Democratic Party with neoliberalism, then not being a Democrat, makes you more popular. So I think going forward, I think that the inside strategy doesn't have much more juice in it. And I think that there might be a role to play, I think, in organizing outside the party and then to challenge the party. And I think especially if you're thinking in terms of presidential race, but also in sort of other primaries for Senate and Congress, to get people who are outside the party, doing political agitation, political work, building a political base, and then coming into the party as an outside force. So I would imagine someone let's say imagine a union leader like Sean Fain, or there are others, but organizing events, organizing a draft Sean Fain movement, but it's outside the Democratic Party, and that he only comes into the party as an outside force and doesn't try to play nice or beforehand.
So
I have a slight disagreement,
let me just see if I understand, because Sanders said something similar in his interview with John Nichols, but it was he was talking more about in red states, try and encourage Dan Osborne's. But what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is, well, there's two things. One, and maybe Emma's going to take issue with this as well. The analysis that working within the party somehow diminishes your electoral power. I mean, because that's one assertion, and maybe your ability to bring people into the maybe ability to bring people into it. I mean, it's unclear to me that you can make that case with AOC. Frankly, because she did very well in her district,
That's true.
particularly relative to Harris. But the idea of organizing outside of what people traditionally perceive as partisan politics, building a power base and then moving laterally into the Democratic Party so that you already come. But that's sort of like what AOC did in some ways in her primary, right?
Yeah, I mean, she did in the primary. I'm trying to think of like if it's possible to like replicate that model in this new moment where like Trump is again in power, because I don't actually see the party. I mean, maybe Ben Winkler will become head of the DNC. There might be a few other moves still to play, but I'm not sure that the sort of centrist faction of the party is willing to give up power.
Oh, they're definitely not willing to give up power. I mean, the question is how do we
dislodge them? How do we dislodge them? Right?
Yes.
But the stuff about I disagreed with how Bernie and not Warren, Bernie and AOC were backing Biden at that time, right? So perhaps we had a different perspective on it at the time. And look, I got a lot of stuff wrong. I thought Harris would win. We're all just looking back and reflecting. I basically thought that propping up Biden in that moment, regardless of when we're talking about ideological gains, if he could theoretically win, which we now know that the internal polling said Trump was going to get 400 electoral votes. That was a miscalculation in my view, because to signal an outsider thing, or really it's about democratic responsiveness, right? Or looking responsive to the public in a direct way. That's what Trump has revolutionized with the Twitter and the vulgarity and whatever. People feel like they know him for better, for worse, and they feel like there's almost a more direct communication style. Why AOC was able to maintain her, I think, her popularity in her district, which is majority Latino, the group that Biden lost most from, was because she still has that insider status, despite what you said. Even if, outsider, despite but despite what you say, because I don't think people paid attention too much to that period. It still is generally her working class background, her not talking down to people and coming off as critics of both parties in the way that Trump does, and speaking directly to people. I think that's what the Democrats really, really failed with. And that is because, in part, Biden was unable to communicate and didn't use the bully pulpit of the presidency in any way. So that's just my difference, I guess, in your analysis of her specifically. But I think if you were to expand it beyond her, because her political acumen is so specific, I would agree with your assessment.
And I don't want to be jumping on AOC too much. I mean, I think my main issue is not even like a criticism. Like, I just think that the insider game that she played has kind of failed. I think the insider game that Sanders played yielded some policy successes, but it's also like there's no future for it, right? Like, if you don't have a Democratic president. So I'm just trying to think of like where do you go? And what part of this?
But wait a second. Let me just because I'm unclear and there's two things. One, we got an IM that says, I agree with Jeet. Progressives need to abandon the Democratic Party and use that refutation as a uniting force of the left. We should pressure the squad to go independent and third party and form a coalition as a leftist front. That's not what you're saying, right?
No,
right. Okay.
I think that they need to like have some independence from the party, especially if the party.
But what does that look like in terms of like, because I'm looking at the labor advances and the antitrust advances, and the antitrust advances were even more extensive. And Warren, I think, plays
Warren,
almost exclusively an inside game versus an outside game, whereas Bernie does the opposite, right? I mean, Bernie was out there using his campaign to literally fund union organizing simultaneously. I mean, he was definitely pursuing that. It didn't catch in the way that I think they were hoping it would at the time, although it's arguable as to whether, Sean Fain is president of the UAW, were it not for what Bernie's campaign did to the idea of that membership in these unions had about organizing. So, I mean, it's a little bit hard to say that you may not see a direct thing, but it's undoubted, a lot of that happened that way. But where is the failure here with AOC? Like, she gets 84 votes. She doesn't get the committee thing. Her playing nice in certain instances. But what's the cost associated with that playing nice in electoral terms or in real terms that you see? Because as far as I can tell, there's no winning or losing at this point. Like, she's still in the game. If she leaves Congress, she lost, right? Okay. Like, I get it. But where are you making the assessment here, other than like she didn't win that one race? But that it's pretty rare that a 3-term Congress person becomes chair of, or I should say, ranking member of a committee.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that's all fair. I guess my question would be, like, sort of going forward, does she continue to try to pursue, like, trying to get these committee positions, or does she become a more kind of outspoken critic of the party, the way that, say, Bernie is, like, Talib.
I mean, I think like Rashida Tlaib, and I think what she's doing is hugely important, because she's like almost a sole voice in Congress, who is speaking out in any type of forceful way against what we're doing in that regard. But where does that get her? Because it seems to me that Bernie Sanders did this for 30 years. Yeah. He did what you're talking about in the House for 30 years and was lucky enough to be able to get, to become a senator, and then was going to do it in 2016. And because his mindset was, my job is to message, period, he missed a golden opportunity, it seems to me, to have actually become the nominee.
Yeah, no, I mean, he didn't take his own campaign seriously enough for his chances. No, but I mean, if that is the model, then one could see someone doing it not for 30 years, but for like 10 or 15 years, right, and like actually like getting somewhere with it. But I think it wouldn't mean, if one is going to pursue, like, not just with AOC, but with other people, like, within the party, or I think especially, like, my whole analysis is partially based on the fact that I really think, as we talked about before, we're living in an anti-system era. And I think that, like, the sort of points that you get for working within the system aren't as valuable as the points you can get from people who see you as the avatar or voice of anger against the system.
But how much power could AOC get in terms of outside? Because what you're talking about is you're talking about points with the electorate, right? Yeah. Like with constituents.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm partially thinking about going further, like either running for the Senate, governor, or president, and especially like thinking in terms of like what would a left challenge in 2028 look for within the Democratic Party. And I don't think that it can be someone doing even though, like, I think Elizabeth Warren has had an amazing legacy and has, a lot of the good things that came out of Biden came from Elizabeth Warren and her people. In terms of like actually pushing the party to the left, of dislodging that sort of centrist faction and having a real shot at the nomination, I think the only path forward is organizing outside the party, against the party, to change the party.
Okay, so you're talking about like we're talking like a presidential election, or maybe like some type of high-profile Senate.
AOC as I mean, she's young, but like not that much younger than JD Vance, I think. I think I actually or her or Sean Fain or whoever. Like, I'm trying to like think a little bit about like how and it's at the presidential level, yes. But also, like, in terms of, as Bernie Sanders mentions, in terms of Senate races, governor's races, like what is a way in which, I think, like the left critique of American politics has a much wider resonance than its electoral results are. And I think it's partially because it's very difficult to articulate that left critique within the Democratic Party. So the question is how can we organize? Maybe AOC's energies would be better spent, doing the critique of the Democratic Party, which she also does very well, focusing more on that rather than pursuing committee positions. Like, it would have been great if she had gotten the committee, but like for me, this was a real. I understand the point. She's young, but they literally had a guy who's dying. They literally put her up against the guy who's dying, and they said, "We're going with the guy who's dying." And for me,
It's
that
his
was like,
turn.
It's his
Well,
turn.
I mean, that's
what matters.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not seeing her as a viable presidential candidate in 2028 at this point. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think if your argument is she's setting up a run to do that, we see that with Chris Murphy, right? Like, Chris Murphy's out there criticizing on day one. He's out there criticizing the Democratic Party as vaguely, to the extent that you can. If you're Chris Murphy, I guess. And that's the way he's trying to set up his run. I think what you're talking about is having a little bit more than just an aesthetic in terms of that critique. I mean,
she would be. To me, she'd be superior to Murphy because she would actually have like an actual politics.
Oh, I agree.
An actual credibility.
Yeah.
But I mean, not just at the presidential level. Like, I think like at all levels of the party, you're going to have people like, you have primary races, like in Congress, in the Senate, for governor's races. And the whole question is like, how do you, push this party to the left, or how do you not even to the left? I mean, I think, like I said, how do you make it like a more of an anti-system party, more of a party that is actually able to listen to the anger that is out there among voters? And so my whole thing is, I worry that an insider strategy at this stage, like I think it made a lot of sense, especially in 2021, 2022. But at this stage, I think an insider strategy cuts against like the need to have a left anti-system politics.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I'm not sure that you can't do both, frankly. I mean, at least in the position, if you're in Congress, you're sort of you're more or less part of the system, it seems to me. Like, I don't know how I can see you can run against the Democratic Party within the context of the party, I guess, and it depends on like where someone like her thinks that she's running. I also think that like just taking power and doing what you're going to do with it is a good thing. Now, I also think that like, actuarially speaking, if we're sitting here saying that Jerry Connolly cannot go the whole way, maybe he can't.
Maybe. But I'll also just point out, like, there is also a problem with like, as much as we talk about how the Republicans are, like, the Trump voters, they're lacking in media literacy, or like they're doing so for an uneducated reason, and that's an easy point to make. The Democratic primary voters reward the exact wrong things every single time. And it is the constituency that has been continuously cultivated within the Democratic primary voting base is one that values, like Nancy Pelosi has, 80% approval rating with Democratic voters? Yeah. So there is a problem, I do believe, and disconnect between the structure of the primary process in the Democratic Party and it's way too insular, like their leadership fights, like this gerontocracy. It's all about internal politics in Washington, as opposed to like thinking about general election mobilization and not just doing kind of this safe cowering thing that the Democrats have been doing as a voting bloc for quite a while.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I think that this last election might offers an opportunity to maybe change some of that. I mean, as mentioned, like, Sam and I were on this cruise, and there were there's the cruise is actually a microcosm for the whole Democratic Party. You get everyone from sort of like red diaper babies to DNC types. But I did notice that like many more people were receptive to sort of critiques of what we could call MSNBC resistance liberalism. There was a few people who still said, "Well, I like Joe Scarborough," but I think most people are not there anymore. And I actually think that one of the opportunities of the moment is like that sort of hold. I think that institutional supporting primary voter came from the fact that the party could deliver. They could deliver like election victories. They could deliver some results, right? But if you have a Republican trifecta and you've lost to Donald Trump like 2 out of 3 times, I think that there's like a lot of people that are going to be open to a critique that, hey, the people are running this party, there's something fundamentally wrong with them. Yeah. And I think, again, this is what Donald Trump was able to do. Like Trump came at his success was owed to the fact that Bush and Cheney had discredited a whole wing of the party. Mm-hmm. McCain had lost, Romney had lost, and so there were a lot of Republicans who didn't respect the party. And so if people were saying Donald Trump's not a real Republican, he's like an outsider, that's all to the positive. So I actually think that within the Democratic Party, there might be some appetite for someone who actually challenges all the failures of the party elite.
I think that's true. But I also think this has been a constant, for the last 15 years. I think, Obama won as a change candidate. Yeah. He didn't necessarily provide it in the way that I think people thought, but generically speaking, he was a change candidate. And remember, everyone prior to Obama in 2004 given that speech, and even months later at the DNC, go into 2006, everybody thought it was Hillary Clinton's. Yeah, everybody thought that. Everybody thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee. There's no discussion. And it wasn't until 2006 where, Obama, who was just 2 years into the Senate, prior to that was a state legislator, gets on the scene. And so there was that same sense that he was from the outside, even if he didn't necessarily have
criticizing
the kind
the
of
war.
base.
Criticizing the Iraq War.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the whole point. Since basically the Iraq War went sour in 2004, and then with the economic meltdown in 2008, Americans have been unhappy with the direction of the country and have been anti-system. And Obama was the first anti-system politician.
And Bernie was the number 2. This is the problem with the Democratic primary, process that we had, is that, Bernie was also considered that candidate.
Yeah, he was.
But Trump criticized Jeb Bush on the war on the debate stage as well. So the 3 people we're talking about here were all against this militarism. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I know we're all have a lot of thoughts, but I'm reading Richard Beck's book right now about how we're all just living in the shadow of 9/11 and the war on terror, and how a lot of our political ecosystem right now can be explained by that. And I think that we're hitting on that here as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Obama came as a change. And I think in 2012, he was gifted by the fact that the Republican opponent was Mr. Establishment, like Mitt Romney, whose family had been huge in the Republican Party and in Mormon politics for over a century, and who literally made his money deindustrializing the Midwest and throwing people out of work as a vulture capitalist. And so Obama could again be, I'm the agent of change. And Obama ran as the agent of change, not just against the Republicans. He was I'm turning the page on the Clinton era as well. Yep. But unfortunately, the party, after these 2 victories, they decided, well, let's actually go back to the Clinton era. Let's go back to candidate whose name is associated with NAFTA. And then Donald Trump was able to run as the change candidate. And in 2020, it's very interesting because Trump could not run as I'm fighting the man, because he was the man, and there was all these things COVID and police brutality, which were hugely unpopular, and the Democrats were able to harness a lot of the anti-system anger in 2020. But by 2024, they reverted to what I think is their natural default position, which is we are the party of the establishment. We're the party of the qualified people who know what they're doing, which I think is a losing argument. So I think that the future of politics is someone on the left who can harness that sort of hunger for change, the hunger to turn a page and to move beyond the standard policies. And I don't think like someone like Chris Murphy, who's been a standard centrist for most of his life, but is now using that speech, can quite do it. I think that someone, as I mentioned, like a union person coming outside the party could do it. I think someone like AOC, like if she were, gives more salience to the part of her persona that is like a critic of the party and less to working with it. I don't think there's any leverage or any points anymore for her to try to work with the party at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good argument. I mean, I think it would have to be to some material end, but I also am of the mind that one of the reasons why Bernie Sanders did so well in 2016, beyond what he thought he could do, I don't think he entered that race thinking he could win, was because there was a draft Warren campaign that had been in existence for 2 years and basically built, on day one, Bernie had about 20% of the vote that he would need without having to do it, because they just completely transferred over, and he took over that thing. And maybe AOC can build that kind of I hesitate to say the word movement, but that type of like organization that could then be for another candidate. But we will have this we have plenty of time to have this conversation. One that is more pressing, just before you go, we have a clip of a brilliant Canadian,
2 brilliant Canadians
interviewing another brilliant Canadian who very well may be the next Canadian Prime Minister.
Very likely.
Are Canadian. I mean, and I don't know Canadian history well enough to make an assessment of what is asserted in this clip. And so I wanted to ask you your thoughts. Here is Jordan Peterson speaking to Pierre Poilievre.
Pulver, I think is
Pulver. Sorry.
I can't get that one either.
Every kid I went to high school with was basically of French Canadian descent, but it was by that point it was all Worcesterized, so I had never had a problem. All right, go ahead.
Grateful again, and we're going to inculcate the values of gratitude for our incredible history. Build up the country, celebrate what we have in common rather than obsessing about what divides us, focusing on the shared values that make us all Canadian. And
pause it for 1 second. Jeet, I have to ask you, is there concern amongst Canadians that their next prime minister does not seem capable of even looking into the eye of a guy he's getting interviewed with on television? Like, he refuses to even look at Jordan Peterson as he speaks to him.
Wouldn't you?
I'm
sure that stare is crazy as hell.
Whoa, good.
That make us all Canadian. And I think in so doing, we can, and by the way, put aside race, this obsession with race that wokeism has reinserted.
Well, invented
in many ways.
When I moved to Toronto, it was as race blind as any country, as any city could be.
Right.
Right. And that's flipped. And it's flipped because of that obsessive concern with race. Right. That was something we 100% did not need in Canada.
No.
Right. We basically, what would you say, imported and invented racism in Canada. Right. As a consequence of policy.
Wokeism seeks to divide people into these different groups and subgroups, and we see the results in a 250% increase in hate crimes. But we're going to get back to the basic principle that people are judged based on their individual character and humanity rather than by their group identity. And that is actually, ironically, the most unifying thing we can do to bring our country back together. And as
Jeet, did wokeness invent racism in Canada? This is a fascinating dynamic.
And news to the Indigenous people who were slaughtered in Canada and then also put into re-education schools.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, there's I can sort of categorically say that this is not the case. I mean, obviously, the history of the indigenous people is a major example, but also, I mean, there have been African people of African descent in Canada since the at least 18th century, if not earlier, and along with sort of the pattern of segregation, ghettos. And other things as well. I mean, like in the 1930s, the Canadian immigration policy was to keep out Jewish immigrants, and the actual cabinet minister who's in charge of immigration in his diary said, yeah, in terms of letting Jews into Canada, none is too many. So in the context of a period where obviously there were many Jews who had legitimate refugee claims from Nazi Germany. Obviously Jordan Peterson is kind of talking nonsense. I will say that it is an interesting sort of nonsense of a type that appeals to sort of centrist Canadians and not just right-wing ones. That I think that there's a kind of Canadian pattern of thinking like racism is an American thing, and this is like an American because Americans are very colorful in doing their racism. But I will say, in the 1920s when you had the Second Klan, some of the places where the Ku Klux Klan in North America had the highest density, where you had substantial 20-30% of the population that were like Klan members, was in Saskatchewan and Alberta in Canada, not just in the United States.
This logic is fascinating to me, though. It reminds me, it's analogous to when Trump said, we're not going to test, and we're not going to let them come in off the ship, because if they do, then the COVID's here. And it's the same, like they're basically saying when the awareness of racism reared its head, it invented racism.
Basically.
When people started saying, hey, don't be racist, that's when the racism came.
Right.
It's like as soon as you name the thing, it exists, and it's almost like what's that book? The flying around the kids book, where they don't name Voldemort.
Oh, Harry Potter.
Yeah, like if we don't say his name, he doesn't exist. And then the moment you say his name, he appears.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is the basic idea. If we don't talk about racism, then it won't exist. I think the other thing, though, that maybe the conservatives here can benefit from, though, is that there has been sort of a rise of agitation, especially among Indigenous Canadians, on these issues. And I think that oftentimes the Liberal Party has kind of played lip service to this without actually doing anything. And so I think that there's a kind of pattern of sort of like frustration on these issues. So it's not. I think that the conservatives could profit from this, not just among appealing to racists, but maybe also more importantly, I think the Liberal failure to address real social problems is going to make people think like, well, okay, this guy, he's at least has a different approach. Maybe that'll work.
That dynamic, I think, is also a problem in this country.
Yeah,
maybe we caught it from you.
And another instance, though, of a podcast with these right-wing leaders going on, Joe Rogan, Trump going on there talking directly to people, I think that helped him. Javier Milei was on Rogan. He went to Austin with his sister, who he's definitely not sleeping with. He's had to deny that many times. And that is the international cohesion of this right-wing project. I know you got to go, Jeet, but that's something we can flesh out another day. Doge is what Milei is doing in Argentina, where now poverty is over 50%, and it's been skyrocketing over the past year.
No, absolutely. No. There's a lot of international cohesion, and I actually think, it shows the weakness of the Liberals, which maybe is another Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, where I think we're seeing a broader kind of failure of centrist liberalism, both with Biden, Justin Trudeau, and I think Macron in France, and the Labour Party in England. But this is opening up a space for the far right. And what's kind of interesting is that Trump is talking about taking over Canada, and one would think that if you had a strong sort of center-left party, they could play the nationalist card, as Justin Trudeau's father Pierre Trudeau did brilliantly in the 60s and 70s by thumbing his nose at Nixon and opposing the Vietnam War. But Justin Trudeau has not been able to do that, and the contrast is, I think, with Sheinbaum in Mexico, who has responded to Trump saying, we're going to invade Mexico, as I saying, to hell with you, try it, buddy. And, if you're going to raise the tariffs, we're going to raise the tariffs on you. So if you actually have a strong populist, left populist leader, I think they have the credibility to kind of stand up to this international right and to, use a kind of what I see as sort of positive nationalism. Let's stand up for Mexico. Let's stand up for Canada. But Justin Trudeau, I mean, it reflects the real weakness of the Liberal Party right now, that Justin Trudeau has not been able to do that.
Jeet Heer, National Affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Oh, yeah. Great
Thank
to be
you,
on.
Jeet.
All right, folks. Oh, we have some breaking news.
Ooh.
Let's pop up that skeet. What do we call that?
Jesus Christ. Not that.
Not Jesus Christ. Skeets. What do we call it? What do we call her?
I think a skeet is the...
This from Blue Sky.
Do you know what that word means?
No?
Vulgar, what you're saying.
Is it?
Yes. Super vulgar.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh. All right. Well, then this post. No. I want the post that from Dayan on Blue Sky.
Honestly, you just didn't listen to enough Lil Jon in your life.
I don't even know what that means.
I know.
On Blue Sky, David Dayan just posted this. Can we put it up there? He skeeted up.
Jesus.
I gotta Google and find out what that means.
You should.
Time's moving too fast for me, folks. I just can't keep up with what the kids are saying these days. Whoops. So Massey and Norman have voted for others. That's it. Johnson loses the first ballot.
That's fun.
So it looks like Massey voted for Tom Emmer, the conference chair, or the whip, and Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan. So the vote is still open, but if this stands, then there will have to be another ballot, because they would have to change their votes at this point, because many Freedom Caucus members have chosen not to vote yet, because they're trying to sort of gin up a little bit of nerves for Johnson that they haven't actually, like Chip Roy's been called. They've skipped
wait a
over
second.
him.
So the vote's not over.
It's not over.
It's
yet.
just already two people have abandoned
Correct.
before, and so they're trying to get people to vote for
to come back and also hopefully maybe switch their votes if they can keep the vote open and have Massey and Norman go back.
But what are the concessions that they want outside of Chip Roy wanting to lead House rules?
I think with Massey basically said...
But he said no.
Yeah, Massey said you would have to basically torture him to get him to vote for Johnson. So I guess
he's a blowhard.
But I guess Norman would be the squeakier wheel.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, but if this stands, Johnson will have to go through another round of voting.
I just found out what that means.
Yeah.
I apologize.
This is, by the way, the second time I've had to tell you. You've tried this.
Before. I don't know what what you call a post on Blue Sky.
Just a post. No, it's not that. It's not that. It could be a bleat.
I mean,
like a what a sheep does.
A bleat? Oh, jeez.
Well, I don't know.
Do you know what bleat means?
skeets is on the Wikipedia, colloquially in short posts, colloquially known as skeets.
All right. So, excuse me. Maybe you're the one who's not so hip with what the current lingo is.
Yes, I'm the old one.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible.
By the way, it's not even current. That term was from like one of the first cursor vulgar terms I probably learned as a child. It's not current at
Okay,
all.
so I'm in my 40s or 50s when that term was first deployed. Folks. Oh, I didn't even get to my Social Security breakdown.
You didn't. We could do that in the fun half.
We'll do that in the fun half. I don't know what made me think of Social Security after that exchange. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you allow this show to survive and thrive. The more members we have, the less we rely on things like YouTube. And I mean, I love relying on Twitch poggers, but you know, we don't want to have to rely on any of these corporations and their fickleness. Gosh knows what happens, like with the Trump regime. Then Google says, "Oh, we don't want any antitrust enforcement. Look at, we're policing ourselves by getting rid of all the left-wing podcasts." I doubt that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened. Join themajority.report.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You can also buy the Majority Report blend there. Emma. ESVN.
Yesterday, Bradley and I broke down the very complicated playoff scenarios going into the final week of the regular season in the NFL. And we also gave our picks in our little competition, youtube.com/ESVN show.
And Left Reckoning, we did our bump steer of the year. Check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See, white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland will be back in just a moment. Okay. We will update you through the program as to what's happening with this vote. On the House floor. In the meantime, more on this H-1B visas. Again, if you have just, if you take a moment to think about this and use just even a small portion of your brain as a progressive, and, even Bernie Sanders is getting criticized for, maybe his tact on this H-1B visa thing. But I personally don't think it's warranted. But you'll notice that he's not really saying I'm siding with one or the other, because the racists are not complaining. And the xenophobes and the ultra-nationalists, they're not complaining about H-1B visas because you're disempowering these workers, that you are exploiting these workers. That's not why they're complaining. They're complaining because you're letting non-traditional Americans in the country. And the ones who are in support of H-1B visas, they're not saying this because we are a better country when we have, a diversity of thought,
open borders,
and open borders, and whatnot. They're saying this, whatever their story is. They're saying this because we want low-wage workers, and we want workers who are going to, even if we've got to pay them something, it's certainly going to be less or no more than we would pay a citizen of this country. But the point is, because they're not a citizen, we can say, like, are you really going to not work this weekend?
Are you really going to complain about, say, unfair labor practices or workplace abuse? Because
I wouldn't do that. Not if I wanted to stay in this country.
Because this is not an immigration program. This is a guest worker program.
Uh-huh.
So I just want to remind people that, because the way we will deal with wedge issues during these years is not to pick a side or another side. It is to go at the issue from a progressive or leftist perspective. Anything else is literally your perspective on politics is, less sophisticated than, I don't know, watching, the NBA playoffs and rooting for a team that's not from your city.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, here is PBD, Patrick Bet-David, who is...
He's going to value-tain us so much. Right?
You're going to get so value-tained by this guy. He, of course, came out in favor of the H-1B visa position of Vivek Ramaswamy and
Elon
Musk, because, of course, this is a guy who also made millions of dollars exploiting people. And he is pro-exploitation of people.
Part of this, to me, is like when you think about when Dallas Mavericks bring Dirk Nowitzki or Luka or Giannis or all these players that are coming from the European system here, and Kobe would always bash the AAU system in the States. And he came from the Italian, he learned how to play basketball, the fundamentals in Europe. Why do they translate from that league? It's results. So my only concern with this argument is...
Wait,
yes,
I'm sorry. Okay, so Kobe was criticizing U.S. development programs. That's been an established fact for quite a while in the NBA. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like the Euro step was revolutionary in that way, the fundamentals from the way that European players played. But they came over here because they can make the most money. and they also are free to leave if they need to.
Yeah, Kobe wasn't told like, hey, if you don't like the Lakers here and you get sick of Shaq and want to trade, you're actually gonna have to go back to Italy because we don't want you anymore.
But we're seeing like in for the WNBA, for example, some of the players who were drafted even high in the WNBA went over to play in Europe because the pay is better there, because the WNBA is so exploitative.
Well,
so
but also, this isn't using the NBA or the WNBA is not apples to apples, because we're not talking about incredibly unique talents. We're talking about stuff that is imminently learnable and is teachable and part of like a basic education. Yeah. You don't need to have some literally 1 in a million skill set to have these jobs and to qualify for these visas. God.
Leak its results. So my only concern with this argument is, yes, keep the jobs in America. Yes, give the jobs to American graduates. Yes, make it competitive here. And if some of these guys are coming here that are the smartest people, why not keep them? Why not recognize them? Why not respect the fact that they create?
Pause it. That is also not the argument. Yeah. I say yes, let's keep them here.
Right.
And let's give them all of the labor rights that we would give an American citizen, so that they cannot be, despite the fact that they are so unique and so talented and so intelligent, they cannot be exploited by their bosses with this looming threat of being kicked out of the country.
And if this was a issue of talent and they're coming to the United States because they are going to get better compensated, and this is the situation where all these coders or all these people working for tech companies need to come here, so like you're not getting paid like you would be in a European league, you're getting paid NBA salary, then they should be paying them the equivalent of what an NBA salary would be in a tech job. But we just showed what Warren Gunnels put up earlier, which is that they're making like $57,000, $60,000 a year, with on top of it the threat of their boss deporting them if they do something that pisses them off.
It's just a matter of like, even the salary, you can't do apples to apples, because if you're if you have the labor protections of American citizenship, you can say to your boss, dude, I'm not working this weekend. No, my hours are not 8 to 8 every night. I'm going to take a paternity leave. I'm going to take a maternity leave.
You see this in the financial papers all the time. They're talking about how Elon Musk is able to get like such productivity out of his workforce. And I would suggest that this is a massive part of it. It is this sort of, and American corporations in generally, they have an advantage because they can coerce people into these sorts of situations where they have to work more for them.
And in the NBA, they're all in a union.
Make it competitive here. And if some of these guys are coming here that are the smartest people, why not keep them? Why not recognize them? Why not respect the fact that they create jobs? One of the tweets, I said, our founding fathers, a guy responds back and says, those are not your founding fathers. Mm-hmm. Guy posts a picture of the Shah of Iran, says, that's your founding father.
Oh, so funny.
But that tells you what, a part of this, there's a nationalist and there's white nationalists. Mm-hmm. White nationalists, Vinny, don't want people like us here.
I know.
They just don't. White nationalists are a very different model, and they can have that argument, but this got very ugly very quick.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with the white nationalist thing. So...
Oh, yeah. So everybody that you've been hanging out with and
pandering to for the last 4 years.
The entire political movement that you've assigned yourself to, turns out they're a little racist.
This is like when Sam Harris realized like all his followers on Twitter were Trump fans, and he's like, wait, what happened?
Right.
You mean my Islamophobia didn't nurture the same, all the people who were, meditating in my Twitter follows?
They're still calling me a Jew in my replies. What is this?
What
I thought they just hated the Muslims. We were on board with that.
That was fine. And yeah, I have do we have more of this, Bradley?
Didn't they just move on?
They kind of move on here, but I got an older clip of Vivek Ramaswamy here. But the thing is like, so that no surprise that they've been pandering to racists for this long. But it is, PBD later says it's maybe about 5% of the guys that are the white nationalists, whatever. Maybe that's a low ball, I'm not sure. But I also think there's a huge part, and Trump wouldn't have won without the people that actually look at it from a labor perspective. The actual issue here, issue that Vivek was speaking to in October 2024. Here is this, if I got the right clip here, Bradley.
A lot of the people who have come here through the H-1B system would tell you, as I would, that it is just a broken system no matter who you're seeking to serve. For example, you want to talk about special interests and lobbying? This is direct Silicon Valley lobbying that said that if you get your H-1B visa and you're hired by one company, you're effectively like a slave. You can't switch to a different company. That's not a free labor market. So there's so much that's broken in bureaucracy.